and welcome to my review looking back at the weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. Now, before I go on, I just want to apologise for not being able to do a preview. Having one or two technical glitches during the week, but back up and running now, and I'm going to be looking back at what was actually um, a very good Spanish Grand Prix, one that I actually enjoyed, and I know that there were many others that actually enjoyed the race. So your top three of Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, and George Russell. But it could have so easily have been another result had it been for different circumstances, which we will come on to. But I mentioned about Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez making it a Red Bull 1-2. Could argue it was fortuitous after Charles Leclerc having to retire from the race on Sunday. And whilst we're on Charles Leclerc, I might as well start off by talking about Ferrari. But yeah, Charles, he was doing everything right, leading the race and going off into the distance really, until he had those engine issues, and then obviously then that brought Red Bull back into play. But yeah, really unfortunate for Charles because he did put in a stonking lap in qualifying on Saturday, and it was all looking very good for the Monegasque driver. But yeah, obviously a DNF in Barcelona, and now he's lost his drivers' championship lead. However, so we go to Monaco next, Charles's home Grand Prix, and what better way to bounce back than win your home Grand Prix? I know Charles hasn't finished the last few races in Monaco. He did put the car on pole last year, but unfortunately wasn't able to start the race. So, he'll be, as I say, if you are looking to bounce back, then what better place to bounce back than at Monaco at your home Grand Prix? And if Charles was to win that, then definitely game on, definitely for sure again. So yeah, obviously disappointing end to the weekend for Charles, but as he says, as he said in his post-race interviews, the fact that there were positives for Ferrari, and I think it's important for them to focus on those positives. Um, and Ferrari are definitely right up there. They're definitely continuing to make progress. So yeah, all's not lost for Ferrari, and as for Charles, what better place to bounce back from his DNF in Spain than at Monaco? His home race this coming weekend. On the other side of the Ferrari garage, it was Carlos Sainz's home Grand Prix in Spain, and a weekend that promised much. Qualifying, he was able to get it up to into top five, and yeah, I thought in qualifying actually he did a pretty decent job to get it up to third. But it's really poor start. So it seemed to have bogged down at the start, gone into anti-stall, and then that resulted in Checo and also George Russell getting by. Then we saw him go into the gravel in that early stages of the race as well, which meant that he had to make his way through the field. So yeah, not the ideal race for Carlos Sainz. However, he was able to get it back up to fourth, and yeah, useful points for Carlos. Obviously, we saw Carlos finish on the podium last time out, finishing fourth in Spain. Could have been better for Carlos, but at least he's now starting to pick up points again, because he did have that spell where he had 1 or 2 DNFs before the last Grand Prix. So yeah, no good to see Carlos score back to scoring points. But got no doubts that he will want more than that. He'll want to be challenging for race wins, and yeah, he'll definitely be looking to help Ferrari retake the lead, at least in the constructors championship, and for Carlos to get his hopes up. We'll start picking up some more strong points to get his drivers' championship back on track, really. So yeah, so not the most straightforward of weekends, and not the most perfect end of weekends for Ferrari, but definitely still some positives to take from the weekend in Spain for the team. Well, one team who will have left Barcelona with a big smile on their faces, Red Bull. Number 1-2 for the teams, so Max Verstappen leading home Sergio Perez for a 1-2. Now Max did come home 13 seconds ahead of Checo, and you'd think just by looking at that, you'd think that it was a straightforward race for Max, but it was far from it. Whilst he might have seemed calm on the radio towards the say like the final third of the race, in those first two thirds of the race, you could argue he was getting a pretty irate on the radio, which was understandable. Obviously, he had DRS issues during the race, having difficulty getting by George Russell, who we'll come on to talk about in a bit. So yeah, it wasn't all straightforward for Max, but once he was able to get by George, obviously once those team orders came into play, which which enabled Checo then let Max go by. Then really once Max was out in front, he didn't look back and took another race win this year, and now he takes the lead in the drivers' championship. So in the end, a good weekend for Red Bull. Still, obviously, they'll want to know why they were having, or why Max anyway was having DRS issues. So they will want to sort that out. But no, a 1-2, can't argue with that. And in the end, a weekend that then saw Max take the lead in the Drivers' Championship, and also Red Bull taking the lead in the Constructors' Championship as well. Mentioned Sergio Perez. Another great weekend, another good weekend for Checo. And he's doing exactly what Red Bull want him to do. And there's already talks that I believe Checo is already in talks with extending his contract at Red Bull. And if he carries on performing the way he is, then I don't think Red Bull have got any other option but to give Checo a contract extension. Look, obviously Checo would have been disappointed not to have been in contention. I'd say much closer to contention for a race win yesterday. Teams had different strategies, both drivers, which then kind of forced Checo's hand in letting Max go by. However, if Checo continues to perform the way that he is right now, that race win in 2022 is not far away, and I think we're going up to tracks now. Particularly Azerbaijan, we know how well Checo goes there. I think we're coming up to tracks now which Checo actually I think will fancy his chances getting a race win. Got off to a decent start on race day, getting by Carlos Sainz. And then as I say, I thought Checo did a really good job on race day, and really good points for him. And Checo's third in the Drivers' Championship. It only takes a couple of. I mean, obviously, it's going to be tough for anyone to beat Max Verstappen, but Checo's got the right machinery, and he's having a good season. A really good start to the season. So I don't think he should be too downtrodden after what happened in Barcelona. But yeah, a lot of positives for Checo to take from the weekend, and a good 1-2 for Red Bull. So obviously Max Verstappen leads the Drivers' Championship, but another driver who just continues to drive the wheels off their car is George Russell. He's doing a fantastic job at Mercedes. He really is, and I think George is, as I say, he's doing a great job. Good job in qualifying to split Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez in qualifying, and for a long period during that race on Sunday, I was able to hold both Red Bulls, both Sergio and Max Verstappen. I think Mercedes at this moment in time, they're not quite having the pace to challenge the Red Bulls, be at a very sharp end, but I think the signs are definitely encouraging for the team. It looks like, touch wood, that they seem to have sorted out their porpoising issues, and Mercedes, George Russell did a fantastic job on race day. But I think the interesting thing for Mercedes is just where Lewis could have ended up. We saw Lewis have that opening lap collision, which resulted in him getting a tyre puncture um, on the opening lap. Without that, I would have been intrigued to see where Lewis would have ended up. The way that he recovered was brilliant. Actually, just remind me of Brazil of last year. And the way that Lewis drove, came through the field, was able to, just drive the wheels off that Mercedes. And yes, he did lose that place, lose fourth in the end, to Carlos Sainz in the end. But even with that, I thought Lewis drove brilliantly the way he recovered, and that will give him a lot of confidence as well for the rest of the season. And if Mercedes can continue to improve as they have done, and if they can build on what they're able to achieve in Spain, then who knows? Maybe we might see Mercedes win some races sooner than we think, and perhaps we will see three teams right at the sharp end challenging for wins, which for the neutral would be fantastic. So yeah, good to see Mercedes do well this weekend, but obviously they'll be wanting more, wanting to continue to make improvements, which they're definitely doing. So yeah, not a bad weekend at all for Mercedes, and they're definitely showing signs of improvement. Now, I mentioned about George Russell being one of the drivers of the season. I think another driver of the season you could argue a contender is Valtteri Bottas. Another great weekend for Valtteri, making it into Q3 with a solid performance, and then in the race as well, really solid performance. I know over team radio he did question team strategy, but I think it was always going to be difficult to keep the likes of Carlos and also Lewis behind. So I think it was always going to be difficult for Valtteri to do that. But even so, a really good result for Valtteri. More good points for Alfa Romeo, and they've been one team that actually really impressed me this season. Alfa Romeo, I think. Now, when you look at where they were in pre-season testing, you're thinking, could it be another season of struggle for Alfa Romeo? But the way that they've performed so far this year, I think, has been very encouraging for everyone at the team. And if they can build on that for the rest of the season, then I think they could be, they could at least be challenged for at least a top 5, top 6 finishing in the constructor. So things are not looking too bad at Alfa Romeo. Another retirement for Zhou Guan Yu. Really unfortunate for him, actually. So yeah, I think that's a couple of retirements now on trot. But definitely, I think Alfa Romeo definitely one of the teams for me, one of the teams of the of 2022 so far. So we come on to talk about Alpine. Another solid performance from Esteban Ocon finishing 7th, and then Fernando Alonso making his way up the field from the back of the grid to finishing 9th. So no, Fernando got knocked out in Q1 on Saturday. It's not the ideal qualifying session for Fernando, but yeah, he definitely drove a good race on Sunday, and yeah, some good points for the Spaniard. And Esteban's also one of those drivers who's quietly gone under the radar and performed actually quite well this season. So I've been impressed with Esteban. I think he's done a very good job so far this year. I think he's done a solid job, and yeah, as I say, good on Esteban for bringing home more points for Alpine as for Fernando as well. So McLaren, Lando Norris. When you consider the fact that he was feeling more or less unwell throughout the whole weekend, and the fact that he was able to still finish in the points, finish 8th as well, I think it's a fine effort from Lando. Look, obviously McLaren will want to be able to score stronger, much bigger points, but you're not going to be able to do that week in, week out, unless you're in a Red Bull or a Ferrari. But I think Lando, as I say, good performance from him in the race. Bitterly, I'm sure, bit frustrating not to make it into Q3. on Saturday. I know he had one of his times deleted, which meant that he wasn't able to make it into Q3. But even so, you know, a lot of positives that Lando can take from the race on Sunday. Difficult weekend for Daniel Ricciardo as well. Yeah, it's not been the most straightforward of um, starts to the season for Daniel Ricciardo. So yeah, difficult weekend in Spain. Not sure what happened with the Aussie, and yeah, disappointing weekend for Daniel. But we know that he's a race winner. We know that he's won in Monaco before, and you know he, you know, as I mentioned with Charles, you know, wanted to bounce back in Monaco. Monaco, I think, is the perfect place for Daniel to bounce back and to get his season back on track as well. So yeah, disappointing weekend for Daniel Ricciardo, but not a bad weekend at all for Fernando Norris. And then the final point scorer of the Spanish Grand Prix, Yuki Tsunoda. And actually, you know what? Yuki has actually had a decent start to this year. More points than his more experienced teammate in Pierre Gasly at this moment in time. And obviously, this is Yuki's second season in Formula One, so now I'm sure the team will be expecting a lot more of Yuki. But you know what? I think for me, looking in from the outside, I think Yuki's delivering. Maybe perhaps qualifying his performances could be slightly better. But I think his racecraft is racing well this year. Now we've not seen many mistakes at all from the Japanese driver, and I've actually been impressed with the way that Yuki started this season. I think he's done a good job. Not a spectacular job, but a good job, good solid job from Yuki. And yeah, I think it's been a not a bad start at all to the season for um, Yuki Tsunoda. I think AlphaTauri will be hoping for a lot more as the season goes on for sure. But yeah, so far so good for Yuki Tsunoda, and I'll just for him, he's just got to continue, just keep doing what he's doing, and yeah, just keep scoring points. And if he does that, then yeah, team can't have any complaints. So that is the end of my review, looking back at the Spanish Grand Prix. Next up is Monaco, which I'm very much looking forward to. Fingers crossed it won't be a procession of a Grand Prix, but I'll be looking ahead to the Grand Prix when I do my preview for the Monaco Grand Prix. And yeah, that's as I say, you want to talk things Formula One. I'm on Twitter at Baggies20, and I'm also on Instagram, Anish Patel89. So have a great week, everyone, and I'll catch up with all you guys and girls soon when I do my preview for the Monaco Grand Prix. Take care, everyone.